So for me, squatting has always been the most intimidating of the three lifts. I think a big reason behind that is it's relatively heavy in terms of the amount of weight I'm able to use. So my competition best lifts are a 590-pound squat, a 340-pound bench, and a 645-pound deadlift.
Let's go! 9 for 9, let's go!
Now, obviously, having a poverty bench of 340 pounds, I'm not really too worried about failing that lift because the only thing that's really going to get damaged is probably my ego. And for deadlifts, even though that's my best lift number-wise, I'm not worried about that either because chances are if I fail that lift, it's just a matter of not being able to get it up, which could also hurt my ego depending on which kind of context we're talking about. So even though squatting is not my heaviest lift, the fact that you have to have that barbell on your back, unrack it, walk it out, squat to depth, and return it, it's just pretty damn scary to me. And it's one of the things I've really struggled with because I'm a very mental lifter. And if I don't feel confident going into a lift, it's a very high chance of me not completing it, even if the strength is there. If my mind's not with me, it's going to be a lot tougher to complete. So one of the things I've really been focusing on is just having a better unrack. And it sounds kind of stupid because I've been on YouTube for several years. I've made several videos on squats, from hand placement, bar placement, how to walk it out, how to breathe better, mobility tips. And the one thing I've always glossed over and never really paid too much attention to is the unrack. And it makes sense to me now thinking about it because it's literally the first thing you have to do. But for me, having a good, strong unrack really builds a ton of confidence, and it has a domino or trickle down effect to every other cue that I would normally have. So in the past, if you take a look at some of my squatting videos, I still have a very similar setup to how I have now, but I'd shoot under the bar, and when I unracked the bar, it was almost as if I was lifting the bar up, almost similar to like a quarter squat back when I was doing my bodybuilding style training. Nowadays, what I really try to do is kind of build pressure and create a lot of tension in the bar. And it's very similar to how some people think about bench press or deadlift. So what I do with squats now is I create as much tension and pressure as I can first, taking all that slack out of both my body and the bar, if you will. And instead of really lifting the bar up, I more just pull it out. There's a joke to be made somewhere in there. Just like in bench, when you unrack the bar, you don't want to lift the bar up. You just want to be able to pull it out. That way you can remain tight. With deadlift, you want to pull the slack out of the bar so you're as tight as possible in as good a position possible going into the lift. The same thing is true for me when it comes to squats and unracks. So when I do that, create all that tension by digging myself into the bar, really trying to push the bar up. In fact, if you take a look at me trying to do this without any weight on the bar, it's virtually impossible for me to do this because the bar just comes right out. By doing this, I'm just able to pull the bar out of the rack itself, which feels very confident on my back as opposed to having to basically use a lot of energy to lift the bar up in the way I used to do it. And that then translates to feeling more comfortable on my walkout, on my setup, and then finally my squat itself. So as you can see here from some of these clips, one of the things I do is I really try to dig myself up and into the bar, get as tight as possible. You can actually hear me breathe in some cases because I'm really kind of making sure I'm tight. So very similar to how I do for deadlifts or bench. And what I found is this has really helped my squats overall. Hopefully it helps yours. If you like this video, leave it a thumbs up. And what I can do is kind of break down all these little tips and tricks I do in each of these lifts instead of having one long drawn out video, just one at a time, because I feel it's a little bit better. I know I ran into the problem previously of trying to do too much too soon, and none of those cues really stuck. And I think if you go brick by brick and get good at one thing at one time, then move on to the next, you'll find you'll be much more successful overall.